So I know that most people by now have heard of this horrible shooting that has taken place. Once again, we have another horrible shooting, and I hate to say it, we probably will have others because of the nature of this article and how complicit people are with this type of violence. And so just look at the title of this article, and it's none other than the same blatant disregard for people who are peacefully protesting, and then they get ignited because they are harassed or they are prompted to be more uh, vitriol in their protest because of their needs by not being met, just basic needs. So Kenosha police chief blames protesters. Instead of blaming the shooter, he blames the protesters for their own deaths because they were out after curfew. So Kenosha police, this is by Stephanie Gorillas, August 26, 2020, Kenosha police chief Daniel Miskinis claimed that there may not have been any incidents if the protesters were not out on the streets. And so he claims they were out after curfew, and so that's why the incident happened. And so Kenosha, Wisconsin police chief blamed two protesters who were fatally shot for their own deaths because they violated a curfew. So Chief Daniel Miskinis held a press conference on Wednesday to offer an update on the protests that have overwhelmed the city of 100,000 people after Jacob Blake, a 29-year-old father of three, was shot in the back on Sunday by police. So McInnes said that the two victims who were shot during the protest on Tuesday bore some responsibility. So persons who were out after curfew became engaged in some type of disturbance, and persons were shot as a result of it. And so everybody involved was out after curfew. So I'm not going to make a great deal of that with that, but the point is curfew is in place to protect, McKenna said. So had persons not been out or involved in that violation of that, perhaps the situation that unfolded would not have happened. So this is the police officer right here, and probably he's stating what I just read. And so in the video, so McInnes added that the deceased individuals were among the people who brought violence to Kenosha, he says. He continued to refer to them as persons only, confirming that they were 25-year-old and 36-year-old Wisconsin residents. So it is the persons whose words are involved after the legal time involved in illegal activity that brought violence to the community, he said. So as the Griot previously reported, Kyle Rittenhouse has been charged with first-degree murder in the deaths of two men who have not yet been publicly identified. So Rittenhouse, he is 17 years of age, used a semi-automatic rifle in the attack and fled the state, but was arrested in Illinois. Despite being labeled as a fugitive from justice, he was apprehended without incident, and McInnes would not call the crime a homicide. So McInnes believed Rittenhouse allegedly was involved in the use of firearms to resolve whatever conflict was in place, which resulted in disturbance that led to the use of deadly force. McInnes was of the view that armed civilians had every right to exercise their constitutional right. Across the nation, there have been armed civilians who have come out to exercise constitutional right and to potentially protect property, he said. So I'm aware that groups exist. So yes, but they weren't invited to come. But Slate reports that Rittenhouse was among an armed group that police didn't seem to mind being on the scene, so telling them that they appreciated them and even providing them with water as well. And so witnesses in video recorded near the shootings may show that Rittenhouse was allowed to walk away after killing 2 people on account of the high stress of the situation and tunnel vision of Kenosha's officers. So it's no different than those of the protesters' side who are walking around armed and those who are counter-protesters or those who are just witnessing to be armed. So I'm not going to address any more issues relative to that, McInnes said. So McInnes, who also claimed there may be some justification for Blake's shooting, bystander video caught the incident and it has since gone viral. So I'm not going to address that because it is a snippet of a very large situation, much of what happened across the nation for a long period of time. It's focused on what you see is in much of the incident. McKinnon said, referring each other black men being shot by police. It's unfair to everybody involved, whether you're the person using force or the person being arrested, and the picture isn't painted. And so a demonstrator stands in the street with a makeshift shield. August 25th, 2020, in Kenosha, Wisconsin, as the city declared the state of emergency curfew. The third night of civil unrest occurred after the shooting of Jacob Blake, who was 29 years of age, on August 23rd. And so there has been a lot of protests going on. So this right here is probably not the best article in terms of title article of what people would want to see, but it is truth telling as to why people are very complicit and turn a blind eye on the actual victims in the shooting deaths. They usually blame the person that has been murdered rather than the shooters of the actual murder, and then they focus on all the other things that led up prior, as if it was justification for the shooting. And so it's not uncommon to see this happen. So what do you think in the case of this? There has been a lot of protests that are going to come out there after this. And so protesters who protest peacefully are curfewed. Protesters who protest peacefully are harassed, or they infiltrate the protest and make it seem as though the protesters are violent when in fact they're peacefully protesting and ignited to become violent because they're counter-protesting against other people who are coming to make the protest turn into something altogether different. Now you have somebody coming from way over across somewhere else and actually taking it upon themselves to claim that they're using their civic right to justify why they shot somebody. How do we see this picture? It's a repeat from the past. It's the same situations, but we got new issues that are mirrored from this old situations, and we have new people implementing the same hatred and violence towards people of color, of course, or people they claim that they feel that they're using their civic duty to justify why they are killing black people. We know what this really is about. So here, I'm going to leave this video with this video inside here so you can see what this officer is saying here.
Everybody involved was out after the curfew. I'm not going to make a great deal of it, but the point is the curfew's in place to protect. Had persons not been out involved in violation of that, perhaps the situation that unfolded would not have happened. So the last night, a 17-year-old individual from Antioch, Illinois, was involved in the use of firearms to resolve whatever conflict was in place. The result of it was 2 people are dead.
Having said that, I'm going to let this video go. Like, comment, subscribe. What are your thoughts on this? This is horrible, and we've been seeing a lot of this lately. Thanks for listening.